Hello and welcome back to Ramblings of a Mad Guy. Today we're going to be looking at someone that really annoyed me. In comedy there's a common saying, it's you always punch up, you never punch down. And today we're looking at a video of someone who calls themselves the Skeptic. He's not particularly skeptical, he's more just mean, but he's called the Skeptic, and he's taking on the position of a young guy, a Finnish guy. I can't remember what his name is, but we'll see. Who believes in God, and he is presenting his arguments, and not really arguments, but he's just presenting why atheism is not convincing to him. Well, today we're going to be looking at someone who doesn't even debate. He just sort of hides behind his screen and likes to tear down the random opinions of some other poor guy on the internet, who, by the way, barely even speaks English. So the epitome of punching down. I hate when people punch down. So today, I am going to be punching sideways, at the very least, and maybe even up, depending on your perspective, and defending our poor Finnish Christian friend from this annoying, smug atheist. Let's get into it.
But I would actually say that I'm not convinced of atheism. So first I'm going to tell more practical reasons that may not be as forcing, and then in the end of the video I'll give you kind of the argument that I would use if I were debating this. But I'm not a debater, I'm not a philosopher. I'm just documenting my self-improvement and philosophy journey on this channel. So the first thing is that most atheists live inconsistently.
Remember that. This is an important point for why I'm making this video. He says it himself. I'm not a debater. I'm not a philosopher. I'm documenting my journey through philosophy, okay? So the point of the video is testimonial, not argumentative. And yet, the skeptic, the floating, disembodied circle, is still going to treat this guy as if he's making arguments. And is he going to give the guy a chance to respond to the arguments? No, of course not. That's why I'm not going to give the skeptic the chance, unless he wants to come on my stream, in which he's more than welcome.
The worldview.
What worldview? The worldview you assign to them? Well, of course they're not living consistently to the way you think they should. They might not know how you think they should live, nor would they probably care.
And you know what? Most atheists don't ever have any sort of philosophical training.
You don't need philosophical training to not be convinced of a god, buddy. You can word game it up all you want, but it still wouldn't demonstrate the existence of a god.
No, you don't need philosophical training, but if you're going to make the positive claim that there is no God, then of course you should have some idea about philosophy in order to make that claim. Otherwise, you just come off as a smug asshole. Okay.
Most atheists assume things like meaning, assume things like morals, but these things don't exist in atheism.
Meaning and morals don't exist in atheism, other than the fact that it's purely about the position of does Godfrey the human herder of the clouds exist? I'm an atheist. My life has as much meaning as yours or anyone else's, in that I want to live as long as possible and have fun with my family whilst I'm here.
Okay. A couple problems off the bat. First of all, you know what the kid means. He's talking about the objective ground for meaning and morals. He's not saying you don't have morals. He's not saying you don't create your own meaning. But he's saying that they're subjective, okay? Also, you have as much meaning as anybody else, but your meaning in life is to live as long as possible and to have fun with your family? That's like the shallowest meaning structure I'd ever heard. In what sense is that equal to somebody who lives to serve the good of all mankind, or to serve the good of the universe, or to be as loving as possible, or to love God, the source of all love? I mean, even on the face of it, even if you don't believe those things, if those things were true, then you would have more meaning than someone who just wants to live as long as possible. That's like some kind of Bond villain meaning.
And morals? Morals existed long before the concept of any gods.
But you have to assume this.
Also, morals could not have existed long before the concept of any gods. It could if you presume that there is no such thing as God, but if God is real, or gods, then obviously they exist before morals. So I don't know what you're talking about.
These things to have a worldview at all. to live your life, to live your everyday life at all.
You have to assume you'd understand atheism. I don't think you do.
So most atheists are inconsistent, and most atheists have absolutely no idea what their worldview entails for them. And yeah, that's basically the first reason.
Okay, but you still haven't shown what the worldview that you think atheists have is.
The second reason, this is probably the number one thing. If there's an atheist,
The second reason is the number one reason, but hang on.
yeah,
Give the kid a break. If you were in a room with him, debating him in person, would you really treat him like that? Especially when English is his second language? And also, why can't his second point be the most important point? Please explain that for me, disembodied, floating circle, who doesn't even have the courage to show his face in order to just make fun of the way this kid is structuring his sentences. You're just nitpicking. And you're not even doing a particularly good job. You're nitpicking his language. No wonder you don't have the courage to show your face when all you do is make ad hominem attacks behind your little keyboard, behind your little screen. This kid at least has the courage, the balls, to get up and say something. You just like to wait and pause and say, well, he said, the second thing is the first thing? I mean, you're just silly. Get a grip, brother. Argue the points, argue the strongest versions of the points. Don't nitpick and make fun of somebody when they say something in a way that you wouldn't say it, even though the thing he said actually makes perfect sense. Of course, your second point can be your most important point.
ask them about morals, and most people have never even thought of this thing, which is kind of sad.
What's sad is that folks think that a being who gives instructions on how to own people as property and orders the death of millions of people is a decent moral compass. It's pretty simple. I want to survive as long as possible. I want my family and friends to survive as long as possible. Looking after them, working together, being a decent person will give the best chance of that longevity. Teamwork makes the dream work. Murder makes it herder.
But
Okay, I'll admit that our Finnish friend here goes a little bit too far. He hasn't considered this when he says that the atheist hasn't thought about their morals or where they come from. Most of the atheists I talk to at least have some conception of where morality could come from, some way to ground it outside of just the most subjective version of it. So our friend here, the Finnish fella, is strawmanning the atheist position about morality. But then what Floating Circle Skeptic does is respond with an even worse straw man. The exact same type of argument. He presents the straw man, which no Christian believes, that God is evil, that God commands murder. Now, the divine commandments in the Old Testament are a very complex topic, probably a topic for a different video altogether. But in the meantime, check out Gavin Ortlund's video on how we can possibly hold these Old Testament commandments, these difficult passages, with the God of love and kindness and goodness. So instead of engaging with any sort of argument like that, Floating Circle goes, but Sky Daddy is worse than I am. Really, Sky Daddy is worse than you when your stated meaning of life is to live as long as possible. You realize, that's like Hitler's view, right? I'm not saying you're Hitler. I know Hitler had other views that make him even worse than you, Sky Daddy, but I'm saying that provides no ground for morals. Living as long as possible. Actually, you could imagine doing really horrible, horrible things in order to make sure that you lived as long as possible. Even worse than that is the desire to have fun with your family and friends or whatever. What is fun? What if you find it fun to kill people, as many people do? Then that would be part of a legitimate meaning structure. That would be a legitimate morality if you found it fun to kill people. So if you found it fun to kill people, that would be your meaning, and that somehow makes you superior to God? And you're going to say, of course that's not a valid, moral structure. You can't, if you found it fun to kill people, that would not be moral of you. So it's not right. It's not part of a moral meaning structure. But how do you even know that? You only have the knowledge that working together provides you a better chance at longevity because of the last 2,000 years of golden rule training. So where did that come from? Evolution? Well, certainly not. Because for tens and tens and tens of thousands of years, that was not at all self-evident. I'm not saying Christ is the only one who reveals to us that we should treat our neighbors as ourselves, but everybody who has revealed that has come from a religious framework. So what development has the atheist provided to the golden rule such that you can throw away the grounding for it, the basis for it, the very soil of which it grew up in, especially when it's so obvious from history that it was never the case that you treat others the way you treat yourself. In fact, you subjugate and you oppress them in order to increase your power. Now, if you're just living to live as long as you can and provide for your family, then there's actually no reason you shouldn't suppress everybody around you and steal their resources, steal their things to make your family happier so that you can have more fun, right? So this thing that you consider to be self-evident about morality is not at all self-evident. In fact, Christian ethics did 90% of the work to make it seem self-evident in our modern Western culture, but then you're taking credit for the last 10% by just saying, well, everybody knows you shouldn't do that.
Say like, yeah, morals don't exist, but moral relativism.
Well, that came out of nowhere. What I think happened here is someone learned a new word and wanted to use it in a sentence.
So smug. You know exactly where that came from. He was literally just talking about morality. He's making a claim about objective morality, not that you don't have morals. Moral relativism is one of the most obvious problems with the atheistic worldview. So of course he's going to bring it up. But you just shrug it off and throw another ad hominem at this guy because that's how you interact. If you are pretending to not know the theistic argument for moral relativism, then you are arguing disingenuously, which of course you're doing anyway because you're just like a floating circle pausing this guy's video every 2 seconds to make fun of him. And if you don't actually know the argument for moral relativism from the theistic worldview, then how can you consider yourself a skeptic? What right do you have to judge this guy if you don't even know the most basic argument that he's presenting?
On atheism, there are no morals. There just is. You know, if you're born on this planet and this planet that smashed into whatever life came out, there is no good or bad.
What are you on about, Luca? You've gone from morals to planet smashing.
There just is.
Again, do you really not know what he's on about? In what sense are you a skeptic if you haven't heard these most basic arguments from the theistic perspective? I understand Luca is not laying them out clearly or presenting them in their fullest form, but two things. He literally says he's not a debater or a philosopher, and he barely speaks English. So why are you choosing this video to make ad hominem attacks about? Let me make the argument for Luca so that you understand, if you really haven't heard it before, which I would be shocked by. Luca's saying that if life and consciousness are simply the results of atoms, molecules, stars, and ultimately planets smashing together out of sheer random chaos, then there is no intrinsic value to human life and human consciousness, and therefore human morality or meaning. It's just a sheer deterministic natural event. And if your morals and your cognitive faculties are the product of this sort of random clashing and smashing of atoms and molecules together, then they are the effect of a dispassionate process aimed towards no essential goal, no essential endpoint. And if your neurology, your beliefs, your behavior are not aimed towards any sort of specific goal or endpoint, then any meaning is just as good as any other meaning. And so if you find it meaningful to kill people, to do Holocaust, to do slavery, to do anything like that, you actually have no ground to say that that is less true than another combination of atoms and molecules smashing together, which makes someone believe that those things are wrong. That's the argument. So you have to defend, why are things objectively right or wrong when there is no objective lawgiver? Nobody to judge, nothing to say on the pure objective front.
Is this physical matter that moves? There is no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong as determined by a God, which is good because the biblical God doesn't have a clue anyway. I'm not a dick, so I don't kill people. If you need a God to tell you how to be good, chances are you're not very good.
If you need a God to tell you how to be good, chances are you aren't very good. Yeah, that's exactly the point. People are not good. Have you ever looked at history? Have you ever looked at anything? We are reprehensible. We do horrible, horrible things. You just presume that it's easy to be good, but that's because you live in a world steeped in Christian ethics. You believe that human life is valuable. That was not the base belief of human beings for tens of thousands of years, for most of our history as people. So when you say, oh, I know it's right not to murder because I'm not a dick, as you put it, how do you explain how you know it's right not to murder when it was so obvious that you should murder back then? Please explain that.
And most atheists would like to make some moral claims. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you must support women's rights. Oh, you shouldn't marry a child. Oh, you shouldn't be murdering people. Why?
Luca, why do you want to marry a child, you f***ing weirdo?
Do you actually think he wants to marry a child? He's making the point about objective morality. You're saying morals are subjective when you say that there's no objective moral law giver. When you're saying that it's a product of evolution and the product of atoms and molecules smashing together, there's no reason to take any one person's moral structure over any other person's moral structure. That's what Luke is pointing out. He's not saying he wants to marry a child. I mean, don't be so dense.
As an religious person, I do agree you shouldn't do those things. But why? On atheism, why shouldn't you do that? If you want to do that, why not?
Because I'm not a moron.
And I'm
Doesn't answer anything because I'm not a moron. It's wrong to do so, so it's wrong to do so.
I mean, if you say like, well, other people don't like, society doesn't work. Well, why should I respect these things?
Because society exists. Gods don't.
Again, God doesn't exist, therefore God doesn't exist. I mean, it's funny that Skeptic said he's not a moron when he makes pretty moronic circular arguments, but
Why should I'm born on this planet. There are no morals. There's just our facts.
Right. They're just facts. And why are they facts? Because you can demonstrate them.
Why wouldn't I do that if I wanted to do that? And better yet, if there's no free will, because on atheism there's no free will, you can't even blame me for it.
But there's no free will if you believe in an all-knowing, all-powerful God, because it knows what's going to happen to you before it's happened, which means it's predetermined, right?
no, wrong. Another straw man, unsurprisingly, by the Skeptic. The vast majority of Christians believe in free will for a very good reason. Just because God knows something is going to happen does not mean he made it happen. So if I know that the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning, did I make the sun rise in the morning? Is that what you're suggesting, Skeptic? If I know that when my cat is hungry, he will meow at me, did I make my cat hungry? Did I make my cat meow at me? See, this is one of the most easily debunked claims that atheists make about the all-knowing God, that he somehow predetermines things to happen. No, he's just smart enough to know what happens, okay? It has nothing to do with the chain of causality. To know something about, if you know something about a chain of causality, in what sense are you a causal agent in the chain? So this argument has been defeated over and over again, but the skeptic clearly doesn't care to engage with the stronger forms of the argument, but likes to just kind of pick on this guy who barely speaks English and is presenting his personal testimony of why atheism seems absurd to him. And by the way, atheism is absurd. You can't just hand wave away all these problems this guy's talking about by making smug ad hominem comments, okay? This is why I don't like smugness, because then you get responses from me who gets to be smug back to you. If you had made a genuine, thoughtful video trying to steel man his arguments instead of straw man them, then I would have no space to make this video calling you out for being an asshole. But here we are. So, to the skeptic, if you want to have a real debate with somebody, please join my stream, come on my channel, make a video responding to this. hiding your face, as you probably always will, well, I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. One day, I hope you get some courage, like this young Finnish boy here, and actually express your opinions attached to your person. Otherwise, if you just want to be a keyboard warrior and tear apart other people's worldviews, then go for it, but I'm not going to put up with it. So, there's more to the video. I don't even want to watch anymore. I think you guys get the point. Don't be an atheist. Bring up genuine points against theism, Christianity, whatever. That's how we build the strongest discussion. That's how we come to real truths. But don't be this guy. Don't be smug. Don't find the weakest link or someone that barely speaks English and professes himself not to be a debater or a philosopher, and then make these like smug comments and try to tear him down just for the sake of tearing him down. That's not cool. That's not fun. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope this wasn't too infuriating on either part, but I think it's important to call out people like this who are just smug. Also, skeptic. It's not a virtue to be skeptical. It really isn't. It's skepticism has a proper place, but if you're defining yourself as a skeptic, then what you're saying is you just like destruction. You just like to tear things down. You don't believe things. You don't believe on a fundamental level. And I don't think that's the right way to live, personally. But talk to me about it. Come into the stream. Hit the notification bell. You'll always see when I'm streaming, and it'll be fun. All right. Peace and love and blessings, everybody. God bless you. I hope you have a beautiful day. Until next time.